Reboot it!
Hey everyone, I'm Ron Swallow, and welcome to Reboot Rewind, the official after show for Reboot It. Today we have the whole crew here talking about our reboot for Power Rangers. We got Ed Greer.
What's up, Burr?
We got producer Bill.
Hi!
We got Billy Business.
Hey, everybody. Happy New Year, I think. I'm not sure when this one airs. It's 2021 probably by this point. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Everything's much better. Our lives are all fantastic.
They fixed everything at midnight.
Yeah, amazing. It's amazing. So let's talk about how this one came about. Was Power Rangers one of the ones that you guys were dying to do?
I mean, I was, but I don't. You guys tell me and just be honest. Did I push for this one? I don't remember. I definitely wanted to do it, but I don't know if I was like, we gotta.
So this was a season 2 episode. And this, I feel like, was sort of the second batch of episodes that we decided on. So it was like an email flurry in the middle of shooting that season. I was super on board because I've always seen a ton of unrealized potential in Power Rangers. And I also felt like that reboot that they did in 2011 or whatever it
17.
was. Oh, okay. Feels like 10 years ago because it made so little impact.
Actually.
No, I mean, I just felt like that one was so poorly done that I was just itching for us to come up with a better take than. I mean, it wasn't poorly, like it was competently produced, but it just felt so safe. It just felt so like, let's just take everything the show did and treat it way more seriously, which I just feel like is, oh my God.
It also did that horrible 90s thing that I thought we were past, which is like, don't show them in the cool costume you've been waiting for until the last 10 minutes of the movie. That really upset me when I saw it.
And then even once they're in the costume, the way they designed the costume, it just felt like, what is this? Like, who are you even trying to please?
It's strange. So in the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, the one that came out in 1995, that was like, the first movie where it was like the cast of the TV show. They actually, in a very John Peters suggestion, they said, hey, film them in the Power Ranger suits, but take the visors out of their helmets. So it's just their helmets with their eyes open. And they filmed like at least a week's worth of footage with that stuff. You can find the photos online. I'll put it up in the B-roll in here. It looks awful. It looks so weird. It looks terrible. So then we get to 2017 and the fact that it's like, oh, this is part of this. You took the worst idea that you guys even like shot it and were like, oh no, this looks bad. Never mind. And you did it again. Like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
And also like that was one of the things that they did in that 1995 Power Rangers movie where it's like, let's take these sleek, simple, iconic costumes and just gussy them up with tons of textured plastic and stuff. And they just did the same thing in 2017 version. It was so weird.
Yeah. It seems unnecessary to me.
Yeah. So anyway, I was super on board with Power Rangers. I think I may have actually suggested it. I don't think this was one that you were pushing for, Billy. I think that this was one that was just on my radar as something that would like get good audience interest and also give us a lot of room to play. Even if I don't think Ed agreed with that.
Look, I just don't have the great love for it. It was my Knight Rider or whatever. I mean, I wasn't on my pappy's knee watching this, so that was a divide. But it was also like a straight up, let's that off the table. If I was a kid that knew that it was just repackaged Japanese stuff with interstitials, I don't think I would have liked that either. It just seems like this mishmash, and I don't get it. I see the clear demarcation between the idiotic preteen tween drama that they try to do and melodrama, and then the kung fu fighting from a whole nother land with a whole nother standard. I just saw that line of demarcation clearly. I was infantilized enough to maybe like that stuff, but I didn't like the duality. So an opportunity to unify those things in a more cohesive way, and to also legendize that, I know that's not a word, but for us to imbue this Power Rangers crap with a legend and a legacy that I felt we could sink our teeth into once we got going. Before, hell no, I didn't think that. But while we were doing it, yes, I started to come around to that.
Did you know, Ed, as a kid in third grade or second or third grade when this came out, I don't even remember when I found out. I had no idea that this was not like all the same guy. Like I had no idea it was Japanese footage from a totally different show. And then like the Power Rangers, like as a kid, you don't ever think about that, which is like the genius of Haim Saban to be like, sure. And I've watched that original Japanese Power Ranger show. It's like intense. It's still a kid's show, but it's like it gets pretty heavy. Like Rita's name is Bandora and she's a witch and her son is murdered. Like it is really like heavy stuff. Like it's crazy. But as a kid, you're like, yeah, rah, go kick a putty patroller. But the other thing about this episode was this was too removed from the Matrix. And after the Matrix, we did Super Mario Brothers, and it was like Super Mario Brothers was just like, it was like we had all gotten in this horrible fight, and then when we came for Super Mario Brothers, it was like none of us like really addressed the elephant in the room that we were coming off like this really tension-filled fight. So Power Rangers was the one where I was like, all right, we did Super Mario Brothers, and it was kind of silly and fun, like it was a great rebound. But Power Rangers was the one I was worried about. I was like, okay, now that that's out of our system, like what's the new status quo? Because it probably can't be as silly as Super Mario Brothers, and I hope it's not as tense as Matrix. So this was one that it did my heart good to know that like Matrix was the outlier, not like, oh man, this is what the show's going to turn into.
Okay, so that's interesting. You've been a lifelong Power Rangers fan, right? So like, and Bill is a lifelong Matrix fan as well. Do you think that helped or hurt you coming into the episode?
I was actually, I gotta tell you guys, I was surprised that you guys leaned into Ed, as you said, kind of the legend aspect of it, because I was fully expecting, and I would have been fine with the He-Man 21 Jump Street approach, because it is so dumb and silly. See, I can do it with mine too. It is so dumb and silly that I thought that would just be kind of like naturally where we lean. So I was surprised that we wanted to lean into the lore, but I was more than happy to go there.
Cool. I'll say too, this was an episode that I came into with absolutely no preconceptions. Like I had nothing to pitch. I was just coming in like, I want to almost say that I really did no prep work coming into this episode. I was 100% just relying on like, all right, my brother watched a lot of this. I absorbed it because it was on television. I'm just going to go with whatever. And damned if this wasn't like one of the most satisfying episodes we've ever done for me. I thought I thought we ran the table on this one. Like we did not make a bad decision. I might be on record as saying this already, but I'll just say it. I think this is my favorite episode we've ever done.
Wow. Oh, okay. All right.
I just got to interrupt with one thing.
Yeah.
I did so much freaking research before this show. I did so much research to find out about like all the different versions of it so that we wouldn't necessarily just do, Samurai Ranger version where they all got cowboy hats and 6-shooters. We wouldn't just do that and think we made something up. But in that, I found out that they got this rich multiverse of the concept, and I think that wormed its way into our version of the show, or rather of the movie, which was quite rewarding because it was like a validation for my approach. Prepare, and it helps you to improvise. And you, the exact opposite, don't have too much attachment to it. And it's like that's the beautiful part about improv between all these different personalities and people. We get each other's approach.
Yeah. 100% agree. I don't remember anything about this at all.
Wow.
Were you there?
I'm not even sure. Like,
Ron's about to read the plot summary, and it's going to blow his mind all over.
Oh,
he has no idea what's coming.
Oh, yeah. Well, like, for instance, this was one of the questions we were going to ask. We took a somewhat more serious tone on this one than say something like He-Man. What made this one a better candidate for a serious reboot as opposed to a straight up comedy? And I was like, oh, we were serious on this one?
Well, we should say though that like we were serious in this one in taking the conceits and the world that they created seriously, not taking ourselves serious. Like, we weren't pitching David Fincher's Power Rangers. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what we did. But I will say this: I do think there's a line to be walked where something like He-Man, and we talked about this when we did our He-Man reboot, or a rewind rather, when you take that world seriously, it just ends up feeling like a lot of crap you've seen before. When you take the Power Rangers world seriously, I don't know that I've ever seen something like that before. Most of the time, when you have a world similar to the one that is posited by Power Rangers, it's kind of played for laughs or it's played for kids. So taking it somewhat seriously was the more avant-garde approach, which is why I think it worked well for us.
And I'd actually argue that we took He-Man seriously in a way as well, because we basically posited a world of like a cartoon in this world, a cartoon war in this world where real war is brought to the world. Like, I think there's an argument that we took it a little more seriously than people think we did. Honestly.
Well, yeah. And on that point, I am always going to push a little bit for a little verisimilitude. If I don't believe the world, I don't necessarily enjoy the comedy. I don't necessarily enjoy the dramatic pathos nor the action scenes if I don't believe I'm actually in a world. So these are just, us trying to do that for each other.
Let me jump on that because I think it'll kind of lead us right into the plot summary. I think that's a brilliant comment, Ed, because so often people confuse verisimilitude as meaning like, oh, it feels like the world I live in. That's how I relate to it, which is what they tried to do in the 2017 Power Rangers, and I think it just came off as boring. We did the opposite thing here. We said, oh, no, this is a straight up alternate reality. Like, the way the government works is different, but because every week you're having giant monsters from space attacking, like, everything about this world just works differently. The verisimilitude comes from finding emotional character beats and motivations that the viewer can understand and connect to. If the world needs a lot of explaining, that's fine. If the motivations of the characters need a lot of explaining, that's where it starts to get hairy. And I think that we treaded that line really well in this one, where the world is outsized and blown up and crazy, but the characters are very relatable. And I think that always makes for an interesting movie.
Well, I am going to give us the pitch then after that, but I got to say, you saying that made me remember the pitch. So I'm pretty excited now. So here we go. The pitch: we plotted a full-on trilogy, treating the entire history of Power Rangers as an incontinuity for this reboot. Teams of teenage Rangers have been fighting monsters for 30 years. Since the death of Zordon, the U.S. military has taken control over the morphing grid. Our movie opens with the biggest Ranger battle you've ever seen, which turns out to be a virtual reality Ranger tryout. Our hero, a teenage girl, fails out. She's crushed. Meanwhile, we meet the current Rangers, 3 tough military types all aging out of the program. They decide they're done playing by the rules and head to an alien planet to preemptively destroy a possible threat. When they return, they go fully rogue, taking over the U.S. On the run is a former government liaison to the Ranger program, Kimberly Hart, the original Pink Ranger, still played by middle-aged Amy Jo Johnson. Amy Jo Johnson. On our teenage Ranger washout turns out to be the world's biggest Ranger fan and an amateur morphing historian. Together, she and Kimberly devise a plan to reboot the morphing grid to its rightful state, which will release the Ranger powers out into the world and depower the rogues. To do this, they must revive Zordon and will travel the globe to collect mighty morphin artifacts, desperate to stay one step ahead of the power-mad rogue Rangers. This will bring them face-to-face with Rita Repulsa, Kimberly's old arch-enemy, from whom they must extract part of Zordon's essence, possibly turning her evil again. By the end of the movie 1, Kimberly will become the new Zordon to reboot the grid, sapping the rogues of their strength. But the new Power Ranger coins are scattered out into the world, choosing hosts like Green Lantern rings. So our team hero must become the White Ranger to unite this new team. Movie 2 sees the Rogue Rangers regroup, cutting deals with old enemies to boost their power, becoming monsters in the process. Sorry, guys, words. Meanwhile, the White Ranger and the new Zordon unite the team and reawaken the Zords, building to an insane Ranger versus Ranger showdown. But the end of movie 2, just as the new Mighty Morphin Power Rangers finally defeat the Rogues, the alien army ambushed in the first movie show up for vengeance. To win against an all-out invasion by giant monsters in movie 3, the White Ranger will need to muster forces way beyond just the 5 new Mighty Morphers, culminating in a multi-generational celebration of every iteration of Rangers. It's pretty awesome, guys.
There's a comment on the YouTube that I actually didn't put in the episode, and I regret it now, but I don't want to call this person out by name, but he kind of was like, it's funny because it was like the exact opposite of what we always say, but he was like, this movie that you pitched only works for Power Rangers fans, and you fanboy it out, and like it doesn't make sense like if you don't know who these characters are. And it's like maybe, but at the same time, like you'd have to watch the movie. I think we would make it so it's like, look, you can still watch Avengers Infinity War, and maybe you don't know everything going on, but you know enough that like the beats still hit, you still kind of know generally what's happening. And I think, yeah, it just so happens I'm a huge Power Rangers fan. That's going to happen from time to time, but I still feel, even as you're reading that pitch, like the fact that our main character is kind of, you know, she's a little bit of a Ms. Marvel. She's a historian. She knows everything about the Rangers. She's your audience surrogate. She's going to teach you everything that you need to know in order to enjoy this movie. Are fans like myself going to enjoy things that will go over your head? Absolutely. But it's nothing that's going to take away from the core of that movie. So I vehemently disagree with that comment. Just because or at least I am a mega fan, doesn't mean that this movie is not accessible to anyone that didn't grow up with the show, especially because Bill and Ed, you guys didn't grow up with the show or didn't like the show. And if it's your favorite episode, I kind of feel like that says it all.
100%. And I don't know why people do this, but like you're mistaking backstory with confusing story elements. They're not the same thing. Like we posited a movie that has a lot of backstory, and everything important in the backstory you're going to learn in the course of the movie. It's still a self-contained unit. So don't fear. I mean, this goes back to the verisimilitude comment, right? Like, don't fear the fact that this is set in a lived-in world. Star Wars A New Hope was set in a lived-in world where so much of the story happened before the movie started. That's what we're doing here. But just like Star Wars, we're going to give you everything you need to know to enjoy the story that we're telling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm starting. It's interesting that you said, because I don't remember if we talked about this on off camera or on camera, but I was telling you guys that I realized I didn't like a lot of comedies on TV. Mm-hmm. And I think I've been rewatching them since we had that conversation, and I'm starting to enjoy them more because what I'm doing is I'm just going, okay, let go that they're semi trying to pretend that this is in the real world. This is not in the real world. This is in their real world. Now, why is this funny? And then actually like laughing at jokes that I probably wouldn't have laughed at before because I was like, this is so dumb. And I think that's an attitude that's very important to have whenever you're going into anything that you're watching is, I mean, sure, be critical. If they don't do a good job, like bringing the world to life, great. You can feel like you didn't have a good time because of that. But if they bring a world to life and then you pay attention and feel what happens in it, like the newest Pokemon movie, what was
Detective Pikachu.
Detective Pikachu. I don't know anything about Pokemon beyond I played the game a couple of times. I've not watched the show. I don't know if ever. But going and watching that movie was a blast. They brought that world to life and they posited a world where there are Pokemon hanging out, doing whatever they do. Mm-hmm. And it didn't bother me at all. And it made it fun.
Now, on the flip side of that, there's movies like Warcraft where I watched that. I was like, I have no idea what's happening. Even some of the later Harry Potters, I was like, sorry, guys, you lost me a little bit. So it is a fine line to walk. But the pitch that we laid out, it's almost like the history of the Rangers is like built into the pitch. Like you can see where the beats would be, where like for you, it would be exposition. And for me, it would be fan service, but it's the same piece of content, but we interpret it differently.
Absolutely. How about you, Ed? How'd you feel about the episode?
No, I mean, like I said, I like the fact that actually understanding how many versions of these Rangers there were played into it, because we built towards the Marvel thing, right? You introduce little breadcrumbs, and then you have a big loaf of bread called Endgame at the end that you get to eat. You know what I'm saying? And that was the whole thing. We did that with Power Rangers. By that third movie, you understand enough about the regular Rangers that we regularly know. You understand that there's outer space ass Rangers, time Rangers, samurai Rangers, doing all type of Ranger stuff all over the place, and we have to call them in because the thing is, the case has gotten too big, McGarnacle. You know what I mean? we did all that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, and it was we didn't start out with 57 generations of we started out with 30 years ago. You know, it was not interminable.
Or rather, more than that, we started out with one girl and 3 bad guys, and that's the. From there, it got bigger, but like we didn't start with okay. We didn't do a Pacific Rim where it's like, okay, here's 10 minutes worth of story so you can understand the 10 characters that we're going to throw at you right now. Like, that's not what this movie is. This is one girl with a dream and 3 jerks with power. And how does that play out?
Oh, and the girl is a washout and somebody else is aged out. So their presumed efficacy is in question the whole time. Thusly, they must show their value by the end of the movie, which is a classic hero archetype that you could key into if you didn't understand anything that was going on.
But also, to defend myself, I feel like this comment was like, you fanboyed and wrote your fan fictions. Like, to be fair, I feel like I was really just coming in where you guys had a lot of ideas. I was like, oh, I have a thing for that. That exists. Let me show you this if you want to use this. Like, I feel like you guys took it way more to Lore Town, and I was happy to get in the car and come with you. But this idea that like I drove it there, I'm sorry, that's not true. And that I hated that comment and I responded to it. But I definitely think that like just because I'm a fan and I can fill in those holes doesn't mean that it's like everything's fan fiction, my dude. Everything. Anytime that someone who wasn't the original creator writes a sequel, directs it, that is fan fiction for like just enough.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. So let's get to the comments, since we're talking about it a little bit already. We love the comments you guys leave, so we're going to take a look at some of them. We got Patrick Jolin. Love your stuff, guys. This was one of my fave episodes. What are the chances you would revisit a franchise and do like a sequel episode?
There have been a couple episodes that we've done that it's like I don't necessarily think it's what we do on this show, but if we ever just did like a random one-off, like there are definitely some episodes we've done like that's cool. I would love to go back and like flesh that out even more. A lot of times that we hint at or we talk about like, oh, in a sequels you could do this, do that. I think the one we just did, or at least we just shot, Jurassic Park / Waterworld. Like, I would love to go back and write the next chapter of that. Again, It's not really what we do here, but if you guys would be game to do like a one-off at some point, and I would love to do that.
Yeah, I echo that. And you know what's funny? I would pick Knight Rider so it could be a bigger adventure, so we could really jump the shark and ruin it good. Because we ended up having a very manageable, large television episode, which is what it was always supposed to be. We ended up having that, but I would love to just ruin it. Large, stupid adventure.
The second Knight Rider would be the return of Garth Knight, and it would literally be our Dark Knight.
Yes, we would just Knight.
The Garth Knight.
Garth Knight. Yes. It's like you wonder why I chase Kit? I don't know.
Yeah. Some of the other, like, I would love to revisit our Universal Monsters, which was an episode that I hated until about 30 minutes in, and then it became something I was really interested in, and I'd love to go back. But yeah, we don't have a Patreon for this or any like member exclusive, but I feel like that'd be a cool member if we ever had something like that.
I second the Universal idea, man, because I think we just scratched the surface of how interconnected these people are. Now that we have a tribe of people who have been inflicted by these various supernatural forces, as we get larger and larger. These guys get, more and more part of the overall phenomena of these monsters and solving that for the world rather than just we did a survival escape movie with a little bit of lore. I think we could start loreizing and start seeing how we could change these characters to people who can deal with their monsters rather than just surviving them. You know what I mean?
Power Rangers, I think we mapped out 3 movies. Yeah. But I would love to do spinoffs. There's no shortage of Saban properties that we could, because I don't think other than our DCEU, which was very like specific, I don't think we've ever like done any sort of like kind of like this lives in the cinematic universe of something we've already done in another episode.
No, that's interesting. I mean, we started to get into some of those conversations talking about Jurassic Park and Waterworld and that idea of finding sort of these unexpected connections between different properties. Something we could definitely keep in mind going into season 4 and beyond.
But those were like properties that exist. I'm saying like I would love if it's like, okay, so for example, next year we do Flubber and somehow it ends up in the cinematic universe of our Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Like we've never done really anything like that except DC, which was, again, like I said, like that was very deliberate.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I would like a sequel to He-Man, and it's just Skeletor. We're just figuring out why Skeletor's a socialist. And
well, dude, I honestly think though that was I don't want to just disagree, but I'm just saying I think that wrapped up in such a beautiful bow that sequel team, they would have a task on their hands to you know what I'm saying. We made harmony. We brought balance to the power. We brought balance to the power in that movie.
No, it's true. I mean, that's a little bit like, trying to sequelize the Lego movie, where like the first one is just wrapped up in such a nice little bow. It just feels superfluous to go back to it. But hey, that's what happens. So maybe we should just embrace the Hollywood suck of it all and just say, hey, we're going to have to do it regardless.
It's spoken like a true Billy.
The new show sequel it.
Yeah.
So we had Jordan Mayhack. If they're hoarding powers, the Rogue Rangers should be purple, blue, red, male, tan, gold, yellow, pink, female, black, brute. This way, visually, there is a cue to the corruption.
So I had a real issue with this because you're 100% not getting how colors work, person who suggested this. The original Power Rangers are the primary colors. It's blue, yellow, red, pink is a shade of red, black, absence of color. That's the primary colors. So obviously your evil Rangers are the secondary colors, green, purple, and orange. And green has already been established to be a corrupted Ranger. So of course, these are the green, purple, and orange Rangers. I will have no qualms about it.
I don't feel that strongly. I remember seeing that comment. I was like, oh, that's cool. I felt like I said, like Chad and SNL, like, okay. Like that was my okay.
No, this triggered me because this is basic color theory, people. This goes back to Superman and Lex Luthor or Spider-Man and the Green Goblin. Your good guys are blue, red, and yellow. Your bad guys are green, purple, and orange. That's how it works. Don't argue with me.
My 2 favorite colors are green and purple.
You're evil.
Oh, that makes sense. It's all coming together. I got to tell you also, I think dudes can wear pink and yellow. I don't know why they got to be female.
But Bill, could you postulate that they would wear those colors because they think that they're the good guys?
I would argue that if you're going to go that route, then they're gonna wear like bastardized high fashion versions of those colors. So instead of yellow, you're gonna be like gold, and instead of blue, you're gonna be like marine navy. You know what I mean?
Or like vermilion or crimson for the red.
100%.
To Snyderize it.
100%. Magenta.
All right. Fair enough. We got Stand Above the Crowd. As someone who loved Kimberly / the Pink Ranger as a little girl, I felt seen by this reboot. LOL. I'd watch the hell out of this. Great job, guys.
So my wife and I, especially when she was pregnant, Power Rangers was our going to sleep show. Like we would just put it on as we were falling asleep. And I'll be damned if Amy Jo Johnson was in a different show than most of the other cast members.
Dude.
Most of the shows, like she can act if she's given something to act on.
I remember feeling that way, even catching it, as a 12-year-old or however old I was. Like, not only was she obviously beautiful and every prepubescent boy had a crush on her, but she could totally act. Like, she was good, as much as the material let her be good.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, she was not on that like rejected by a soap opera level that the rest of those actors were on.
Mm-hmm. And I felt particularly proud. Like sometimes I know that we do think like regular Hollywood executives, and hey, 20-year-old lady, here's a 35-year-old man as your husband. Nobody say anything. You know what I mean? Like, dude, did you know that Nicole Kidman was 22 in Days of Thunder? She played the best neurosurgeon in this part of the world, and she was 22. This chick is Doogie Howser, dog. Anyway, I'm sorry. So basically, we do that in Hollywood, though. We do that a lot, and I think this is a great ode to. This is a hero for young girls, and this is a hero for women who recognize that, yes, I am a grown-ass woman, and maybe I'm not in spandex anymore unless I'm working out, but I am a woman with a job, and I have to do this, and I have to take care of the other generation. I have to save the world because nobody else is going to do it, and all this testosterone is destroying it right now. And I'm a woman of age, and I'm going to help this young woman to solve this damn problem. And we didn't make any big ass deal about it. It was a natural story outcropping, and I love that aspect of it.
Rest in peace, Tui Trang, who played Trini, the original Yellow Ranger. I also think she would have been great because she was another one that was like, oh man, you could have been great. The show didn't let you. Honestly, to be real with you, it was really the guys that were terrible actors on Power Rangers. Like, girls were always so much better, and it was the like Rocky the Red Ranger. It's like, my dude, like even go like everyone's like Mastodon, Pterodactyl. He's like Tyrannosaurus. Like he just seems like he's never heard that name before. He had to say it. But also just like from a marketing perspective, like it makes sense. Like bring back an original Ranger. We know she would do it because she came back for Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, when she wasn't a Power Ranger. She came back for the reboot in 2017 for a cameo. Like, she'll do it, and she can act. Don't waste her.
100%. I also think that this movie, more than most of our other reboots, is so thematically rich. Like, even as I was going through the story, one of the ways that I sort of measure the success of a reboot that we do is like, how amped am I to just write that script after we finish breaking the story? And this one, I was so over the moon about. Like, I literally started making script notes. And this movie is really about power in a lot of interesting ways. And even more specifically, it's about the need to give up power, which I think, I don't know that we articulated it, but like we recognized part of the conceit of Power Rangers is like, you get in there, you're a Power Ranger for like 2-3 years, and then you gotta go and make way for the next guy. And the Rogue Rangers are the villains because they're not down with that. They want to hold on to power. They want more power. And then on the other side, you have the Amy Jo Johnson character. And this is the thing we didn't talk about in the episode, but like in that original series, she was also a gymnast. So whether she wanted to be a superhero or whether she wanted to pursue her dream, she had an expiration date of about 23. And then it becomes a question of like, well, then what do you do when the world no longer cares about you? And I think that that's a really rich storyline that connects directly with that idea of like, you have to learn to give up the power that you may have even rightly earned because the world passes all of us by. And how do you live with that? I just think that this movie really could, in a blockbuster way, tackle some really important subject matter.
And I love that we did that with Power Rangers.
And we didn't starve the people for action. I think that was one of Billy's main big notes that we had to, acquiesce to. I'm not saying had to, I'm saying willingly we acquiesced to that because we recognized that it would have been a horrific mistake to try to Nolan up. I'm going to keep doing it. Nolan up the beginning and try to have all this like, oh, it's so serious. Ugh. To do that and to not give the people what they came to see would have been ruinous for us to repeat that mistake.
I think there was a John Peters note, or there was some reason why. I can't remember now. Full disclosure, I didn't have time to rewatch this episode, so I'm going off memory. But I remember I was like, look, get all your Power Rangers stuff like in at the very beginning, because I think we're going to deprive people of maybe what they thought they were going to get later on in the movie. And that's why I was like, do the Danger Room thing, because it's cool. Like every like the biggest sequence right off the bat, and it doesn't have to be like this. There's no stakes to it because we find out that it wasn't actually happening. But visually, it's like if you could put the end of Endgame at the beginning of your movie and then work backwards from there to get to that scene, the Danger Room scene for reals at the end of your third movie, like that's such a cool bookend for the trilogy.
Yeah, and some version of that towards the end of the first one, but you don't know how horrible it's actually going to get. You know what I mean? Like they get some action, get to do some stuff, but yeah, it's still building. It's like instead of the Death Star again, that third Death Star that we had in our third movie, it was a rhombus made of lasers. It was not just a ball. You know what I mean? It was a whole new thing.
Dude, I think from an action movie standpoint, the structure that we cracked is kind of genius. And I hate when we do these rewinds and we just keep patting ourselves on the back. But if you look at it from a macro perspective, to Billy's point, you open this movie with just crazy Megazord, giant monster, city-destroying action, and then you put the brakes on. And then you get a little bit more of it when the Rangers go rogue and they defeat the military and they take over. But then this first movie kind of settles almost more into like a classic Bruce Lee style action flick, where as they're going after all the artifacts and everything, it's one-on-one, hand-to-hand fights, people caught, in dark places trying to win the day. Then in the second one, we build to the ability to do good Rangers versus bad Rangers team up, with the bad Rangers now having evil monster powers, and the good Rangers, you're not quite sure if they're there yet because they're brand new and who's going to win that. And then you call all the way back to the first act of the first movie for the third one, which is those aliens that they went after and raised their homeworld. Now they're coming for revenge, and it's full on the craziest Power Rangers movie you never thought you would see, like global scale giant monsters invading everywhere. And it all is justified. Like it all works and makes sense from a story perspective. Again, I just think that this one kind of sings.
Oh, and just a yes and that. And with so many Megazords fighting, there could be people on the Megazords fighting as the Megazords are fighting.
Running up the arm, like as the arm is swinging, you're running up the arm. Oh,
Legolas style.
Just hardcore, just, oh my God, dude. Yeah,
you'd get all that is one of the greatest parts about this. You would get that dope one-on-one great ability to film like a cool, aggressive action scene, but then you would have those options to do this insane fantasy fight scenes as well. It's wonderful. Like you get everything into this. Probably lasers too, guys.
Oh, definitely lasers.
So many lasers. So William Nichols the third. Hey, I'm also a third. I'm Ronald Edward Swallow the third, if you didn't know. Not trying to brag. Billy said, Billy is talking a little VR Troopers, LOL. And then Anthony Ebony added, Billy became my hero this episode. He has the same love I had for Power Rangers. And to mention let me say that again, guys.
Get it, put some respect on it. I'll wait. And
to mention big bad Beetleborgs.
There we go. Look, I think there are some episodes where like we all go into it and it's like it's clear one person is the mega fan and it can go one of two ways. And I've been the mega fan like in 2 or 3 episodes now, and there's some that didn't turn out as well. And then there's this one, and I feel like this one is, yeah, I reference VR Troopers. Yeah, I reference Big Bad Beetleborgs because I think this movie, ultimately, everything that Bill said, that's definitely like the crux of all of this. Like it has to work thematically. And then the Easter egg part that I talked about, working for someone else, like, yeah, why wouldn't you pull from all these different, like, Power Ranger? When you say Power Rangers, you're almost kind of like a kid of my generation. You're including this like bigger Saban universe that included the Masked Rider, VR Troopers, Big Bad Beetleborgs. Like, it was all kind of, they're all the same shit, but it's slightly remixed. So it's like, yeah, throw in some Easter eggs, throw in some stuff. Like, I definitely think that this is like the best use of my quote unquote fanboyism, which is like, hey, Beetleborgs did this cool thing, or this element of VR Troopers is not Power Rangers, but just that concept could be cool for this. I mean, that's how cool things like Star Wars happen. You think Star Wars is original? It's not. It's like 8 different really cool things mished together. Every Quentin Tarantino movie is 10 other movies just put in a blender. Like, that's what Power Rangers should be. Take all those 90s Saban things, yep, and put it in a blender, and then pour it over some gourmet shit that Bill and Ed come up with. And then maybe we've got a 4-star meal there. I don't know what the problem is.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, that pretty much sounds perfect to me. So then Suze Vera said, the guy who fought as the Black Ranger was my kickboxing instructor, and he was so nice. Until the second hand of the clock ticked to the start of class. Then he was all disappointed dad vibes that really crushed and inspired to get it at the same time. Can we get a Ranger version of Stripes?
Hey, but you know what? Yeah, that sort of drill sergeant of the next generation. That's going to have to be some scenes in the second one. The beginning of the second one is the Rangers go to Full Metal Jacketville. Like, they gotta really get ready. You know what I'm saying? Because they've been living in a sugar coated topping, and these Mega Rangers who are bad and around the bend with energy coming out of their eyes and crap. These dudes are really serious business. So you guys, trial by fire.
I mean, that's how you get Tommy. That's how you get Tommy back. Yeah, you get Jason David Frank because he was in more episodes and more iterations. He was on like 5 different teams out of all of them. So, oh man, like, and first of all, he would do it. He would 100% do it. But second of all, like, I feel like when you ask someone who their favorite Power Ranger was, it was almost inevitably Tommy. So I would love to see like grizzled, I've seen some shit, Tommy. Like, really, you know, like, I lost my dagger back in Nam, Tommy. Like, that's the guy that I want.
Billy, like I said, my mind has already been like writing this series in my subconscious. I kid you not. Opening to the second movie, White Ranger is up in some Arctic forest like Bruce Wayne in the Snyder Cut going after Aquaman and finds a shack out in the middle of nowhere. And the White Ranger knocks on the door, and it's bearded, scruffy Tommy face to face with the new White Ranger. We need your help. Smash cut to the credits. Start training the new generation. I mean, that's it.
I think you just took me to completion, Bill.
To completion.
Awesome. Oh. So then Video Punk said, this reboot sounds like a little close to the most recent season. Legit and almost government-like organization has control over the morphing grid. They picked 3 candidates to harness morphing power, and an evil entity infects 2 of them during their first morph and turns them evil. Pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, I think...
Great minds, baby.
Yeah, I was gonna say, look, I think we definitely, you know, you throw some shit at the wall, eventually it's all going to be the same thing. But I think what makes ours unique, and what I was kind of saying in my last answer was, I think you take all the elements from all the iterations of Power Rangers to kind of like craft it into this bigger story. And like I say, almost every reboot, it like, yes, someone like me is 100% going to be so stoked to see this movie because I would be stoked to see this movie. But in actuality, we're not making it for people like me. We're making it for people like Bill. And I guarantee you, Bill doesn't know about that series and doesn't care about that series. So it's kind of like, that's cool, but it's also moot because like, I feel like ours is different enough.
Well, and I would just make one caveat in regards to why ours is different. I think it's a key ingredient that some evil force changed the good Rangers bad. Ours is about the inevitability. When you're picking candidates every 3 years, you're gonna get some bad apples. Guess what I'm alluding to? And so you get some people in there that don't want to, as you guys have eloquently stated, they don't want to give up that power. They want to use and abuse that power and keep it longer than anyone should. That's a through line that goes through all of our stuff. It's people making the choice to hold on to power. It was a crux of our Star Wars. Someone choosing to hold on to power, ruining themselves. These guys choosing to keep their power and to raise worlds in order to keep that stuff going and gain more power so nobody can depose them. That's their choice. They're not infected by anything. And I think that's an important distinction.
That's such an interesting way to put it. I've never thought of it that way. It's like when you think of how many iterations of Power Rangers are, like you're recruiting 5 to 7 people. So now we're talking like we're at least up to like 100 Rangers by this point. It's crazy that like, you're telling me not one of them was, like we shouldn't have chosen that guy. Like that in itself is an interesting story.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we very smartly keyed into sort of that is the made for kids fantasy version, that no matter what, they're all going to be good people. So if you just remove that, you've automatically made the whole thing more mature and more interesting without having to make David Fincher's Power Rangers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think it's also, I think this is something we do often, which is kind of talk about the concepts of power and like that it should be spread out, that it shouldn't be concentrated into one person or one group, because a lot of times, and this happens in the real world, I think we all know this, and I'm not even just referring to what has been happening in the United States, but in every country where a good concept has turned bad, it's always because one individual decides to hold on to power for as long as possible and ruin what could be a good thing.
But wait a minute. We're talking about how I like to take the magic out of everything. Did I and perhaps Bill inadvertently do a treatise on term limits as a Power Rangers movie?
But I mean, that's so interesting because it's like, it is crazy. Like, even just from an actor's perspective, it's like, that wasn't the case at the beginning. The Mighty Morphin Power, like a lot of those Rangers stayed for like 5 seasons. And then around Turbo or Lost Galaxy, whatever it was like, you knew going into it that every year is going to be a new Power Ranger, a new set. Cynically, it's because new toys. But also it's like, that is really interesting, the term limits of a Power Ranger, because then it also makes you like even subconsciously think like, how much power do these guys really have that like you can't really hold on to it forever.
Yep.
Look, I think it's right there in the name, Power Rangers. If you're going to make a movie and not thematically address power in some way, you're missing a golden opportunity. So I'm glad that we did not whiff that.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. I think that does it for Reboot Rewind. Let me do that over.
No, there's no do-overs in the rewinds. There's no crying in baseball. There's no do-overs in rewinds. That's my hard rule.
Words today. I'm like saying words and I'm putting long O's on things.
I've never heard anyone say reboot. You say reboot, rewind. It's like,
I know. Reboot, rewind, Ron.
Do you need a glass of milk?
I hate you.
Milk. I need my milk.
It's milk. You say milk, okay?
Ron, I'm not doing this to like be a dick. Like, I'm just not editing any of this out. Like, this just is what it is.
Guys, look,
I have nothing to cut to.
It's the end of our show. You can all suck it. Don't cut that out, Billy. So seriously, thank you guys for watching what we do, for commenting, giving your opinions, joining in on the fun. We really appreciate it. So for Ed Greer, producer Bill, Billy Business, I'm Ron Swallow. Thank you for watching with us. We'll see you next time. Bye.